I was born the seventh child in a family of 12. And as we grew up, we all had jobs to do. When I turned 16, I automatically became the family driver. The girls couldn't drive, and so I became the family driver. 4 years later, my brother asked me to take him to the post office to enlist in the Air Force. He and his friend had draft numbers, and I did not have a draft number. I was too young. We got into the recruiter's office, and they went up to the recruiter's table, and the first question the recruiter asked them is, were they high school graduates? And both of them were high school dropouts. So I went by the door, never moved yet, and I was ready to leave, and the recruiter said, "How about you?" I said, "I qualify." He said, "Come back here and sign up." So I signed up. He told me, this was 10 o'clock in the morning, he told me, go home and say goodbye to my parents and come back, and we'd go to Peoria to be sworn in. And I did that. I came back, and I went, and I was gone for 4 years.
You left the same day you signed up?
Within hours.
Wow. Okay, tell me about your first uniform.
The quartermaster wasn't ready for any new recruits, and the only thing available was World War I uniforms, if any. So for the first 3 weeks, he blew the whistle every night, issued us something: shoelace, a pair of shoes, a hat, leggings, trousers or shirt. So it took us quite a long time to get it. And we were all dressed in World War I uniforms. And that's how we left Jefferson Barracks, Missouri.
Now, in joining the Army Air Corps, had you had an interest in flying growing up?
No.
So where did you go to train?
When we came up to 1,500 new recruits, we boarded a train and went to California. From California, we went to Hawaii. We arrived in Hawaii on December 11th. And that's where we began our basic training. When we got to Hawaii, the 1,500 of us were split up into two groups. A group, for instance, went to Wheeler Field, and a B group went to Hickam Field, alphabetically in that order. And I ended up in Wheeler Field. And that's where I did my basic training. From December till February, we were still in our World War uniforms. And we got into the 78 Fighter Squadron, which was an old World War I fighter squadron that disbanded after the war, World War I, and re-upped again in World War, beginning of, re-upped again in Wheeler Field. And that's the squadron we went into.
So we're talking about December 1940 to February 1941. What was your assignment in the flight squadron?
I was assigned to the armament section in the workforce, in the squadron, and I worked in the hangar in the field until November of 1941, when I was reassigned to Hickam Field to go to school for the month of November 1941. I got back to the squadron on December 1, 1941, and the squadron was spread all over the field and sleeping out on the ground under the planes, all on A1 alert, all ready for action. For the first week of December, I was out there in the field with them. And December 6th, we were told to return to the barracks, line up our planes on a hangar line, dismantle the guns and ammunition, and just use the time to guard the planes from the civilian population.
That's December 6th.
December 6th.
So take me to the next morning. How did your morning begin? Were you already awake before the attack started?
We worked normally a 6-day week. So on Sunday, it was kind of a off-day banquet breakfast that didn't start till 8 o'clock in the morning. During the week, we could get up maybe 6 to 7 o'clock and get down to the hangar line and work. On Sunday, we got breakfast, a big banquet every Sunday, and that occurred at 8 o'clock. And I was on my way to breakfast when the first bomb was dropped in the barracks next to us.
Tell me what happened from there.
The first bomb, there were only 2 barracks at Wheeler Field, and we were back to back with a greenway between the barracks. And one of our guys was washing his car in a greenway, and the bomb took him out. And we came down the steps. It was screaming announced that the Japanese were attacking. So we came down to leave the barracks. And there's like a big veranda in the front of the barracks, and we kind of stood out in the veranda. We could look at the street. And one of our guys was shot when they were strafing down the street. The planes were so low you could just about reach them if you reached up, if you were tall enough. And they were strafing up and down the street. And we were told not to go out because even though the plane flew over, the rear gunner was also in action, so he could also pick you off. So when the planes got far enough away, we would come out and lead the barracks, and right across the street was the NCO quarters, homes, and that's what we were trying to get to across. There are about 3 or 4 blocks of homes there. So as they strafed and got past the barracks, we would run across the street and abandon the barracks. I think I went about 4 blocks before I entered a home and sat in the kitchen floor until the raid was over.
Describe the intensity of the bombing.
We only, as I said before, we only got hit with that one bomb between our barracks. And there was no more bomb for us. All we got after that was strafing. And they strafed continued for a pretty long time up and down the street.
What are you thinking at this point?
Safety. Get away from the barracks in case they dropped another bomb.
Could you tell from the planes that this was Japanese?
Oh, we found that out. We're still on the second floor.
So once you protected yourself during the bombing, what did you do after that?
Well, most of us ventured about 4 or 5 blocks away from the barracks and entered homes there. And we mostly sat in the kitchen floor, waited till the raid was over. In the house that I was in, there was about 5 of us, and the guy that lived in the house was in there. He said, "You single guys should go down to the line." And they were still strafing. None of us went, naturally.
How long did the attack last?
Well, it probably was 15 minutes for us.
At what point did you go back to Wheeler?
I stayed at Wheeler. I was at Wheeler.
But after you hunkered down, getting back to the line, what did you see when you got back there?
All we could do when we went back to the line is try to salvage whatever planes we could from the burning heap that they were in. And most of the planes that we salvaged were World War I planes, P-26 and the P-36. All of our planes were P-40s, and they were all burnt up.
So the vast majority were lost?
The vast majority, 150 planes we lined up. Yeah.
Were there personnel at Wheeler who were lost as well?
Many. See, when I did my basic training, when we arrived at Wheeler Field, we formed 3 squadrons, 45th, 46th, and 47th Fighter Squadron. And we did our basic training living in 8-man tents. So I would venture to guess, and they were all wide open during the strafing raid. At least we had the barracks to protect us. But the original squadrons I was with, and there was, 250 to a squadron. There was quite a few people in there. I never even checked. I have a record of how many were killed, but I tried to read it before I left, and I couldn't read. I can't see.
Did you know some of the victims well?
They were from Illinois and Wisconsin. They were friends of mine, some high school friends of mine. The 1,500 of us that were recruited were from Illinois and Wisconsin.
So these are all the people you started with?
They're the same one. And by coincidence, we also met them on Iwo Jima.
Well, we'll certainly be talking about that in just a moment. How long did you stay at Pearl Harbor after the attacks?
We stayed at Wheeler Field until we got airplane replacements, and we got a P-39 plane, fighter plane, and we were then assigned to protect the Kaneohe Naval Air Station on the northwest corner of Oahu. The Navy used that air base to practice landing. When the carriers came in, they flew over Kaneohe, and they had a ship drawn up on a landing strip, and they would make the pass like they're landing on an aircraft carrier.
So in the immediate days after the Japanese attack, what were you doing? Was it cleaning up? Was it making preparations for war? What was happening?
We were, no, we had nothing to prepare with. We didn't get our planes until February. So it was just a waiting game to get new airplanes. And we never did ever go back to the barracks. We stayed in the field from then on. And I probably spent 50% of my time sleeping on the ground for 5 years.
Where are some of the other places you served between Pearl Harbor and Iwo Jima?
Well, we started off with Kaneohe Air Base, and the captain in charge of the base was transferred to Midway. And lo and behold, he called for us to come. So from Kaneohe, we went to Midway. And Midway is two islands, a rock island and a sand island. And so our squadron was split in half. By then, I was in charge of the armament section. So it was quite a task to try to keep operation going on two airfields at the same time.
So Ed, you returned to Wheeler at the beginning of December, and sometime in the next few days, the planes at Wheeler actually had their armaments removed, correct?
Yeah, I was one of them that removed the armament. Yeah, the order was to remove the guns and ammunition from the planes. There was a lot of resistance from the commander of the base and everybody else, but that was the order from Fort Shafter, and that's what we did.
Was that an order you had ever been given before?
Never. We put the guns and ammunition in a hangar, and the planes were out in the field.
And you locked them up, right?
Yeah.
Now, you're following orders, of course. Did they ever give you an explanation?
No. It was just a big blunder. The whole thing was a blunder.
What did you think about that after the attack, that decision?
It was terrible. The only planes that got in the air and did some damage, in fact, 3 or 4 of the pilots became aces that morning, but they were on a satellite airfield. They were not on Wheeler Field. They belonged to Wheeler Field, but they were out on gunnery on a satellite airfield. So the planes were at the satellite airfield. The pilots had a party Saturday night before Sunday, and they were still kind of groggy Sunday morning when the bombing started, or the strafing. And they drove back to the airfield and got in their planes and attacked the Japanese. And a couple became aces that morning. If we only had a lot more of the ones that were parked on the airstrip up in the air, would have been a different story.
Now, you are still active as a Pearl Harbor veteran. I know you've been a local leader of Pearl Harbor veterans, appearing in parades and so forth. Why is it so important for you to make sure people keep remembering that? It's
hard to make them remember. Sometimes they didn't even know where Pearl Harbor is. It shows up in our parades. You know, we would have parades 7 to 8 people deep, and as time went on, it became 5, 4, 3. You know, less people came, less interest. I went to two different parades, and it was the same story. I guess normal to forget. What's important is what is important, I suppose.
It's been 83 years since Pearl Harbor. As one of the surviving veterans, how important is it to you to do what you can to keep the memory of that alive?
Very important. I there's a wreath ceremony for the Marines and men and women who died on the Arizona in a park in Arizona, and I laid the first wreath at that ceremony. And that ceremony is about the same way. They all start to forget. We got a hard time to have people come to the ceremony in the first place.
All right, let's move to Iwo Jima.
Okay.
When did you find out that you were going to Iwo Jima?
That was interesting, too. After 4 years of service in the Pacific, I was offered a furlough. Fortunate for me, some of the guys that worked under me also were offered a furlough. And we came home. I came home to Illinois, and most of my friends at this time were out of Wisconsin, and Milwaukee and Oconomowoc, and all around the state of Wisconsin. So at the furlough time, we went from, when we came back from furlough, the people who were sending us back at Fort Sheridan in Chicago couldn't believe it. So what they did was claim to lose our paper. Take a minute.
Take your time.
So they claimed that they lost our papers. So from then on, for about 2 weeks, we got off every day. So Milwaukee being closer to Chicago, I went to Milwaukee every day on the trolley. So finally they had to admit that they had our paper, they sent us back. At that time, the troops were being discharged from the European theater at the same base. But anyway, we went back. We were assigned to go to the Philippines. We loaded our equipment. We're lined up next to the boat to go. And MacArthur came up from Australia, so we were canceled out. So then we went back to another airfield and waited, and then they called us up to go to Iwo Jima. That trip we took. So the way the operation was set up, our planes and our engineers stayed in Guam, and we went to Iwo Jima to set up the airfield so the planes could come in. We were designated to land D+4. The Marines didn't have the airfield secured 4 days. So every day we went out to sea. Every morning we came back to land. And we finally got ashore, and every day we came back was attacked by the kamikazes. Finally, they secured the airfield, and we landed. In all those 9 days, the bodies of the Marines were piled up. Well, anyway, we got on the airfield and looked over the situation. I was assigned to set up the operation for the planes to come in. Set up each operator, the pilot quarters or the pilot ready room, and all the way down to communication and everything else. So we got that set up.
And where was that?
Right alongside the airfield, on one side of the airfield. Well, anyway, we the sand of Iwo Jima was like water, fluid. You could not dig a hole in the sand. So we had to go get a bulldozer to dig out and build a revetment for each section of our group to work. So the ordnance officer and I went across the sea beach and got a CB to come across with a bulldozer. We were coming out of the airfield, and we were all of a sudden sitting up there by ourselves. The CB was underneath the bulldozers, and mortar was landing all around the bulldozer. Well, fortunately, I didn't get hit, or none of us got hit. But we got the airfield set up.
What did that involve? What did you need to do to properly set up the airfield?
Well, we had to dig out revetments to get anything solid, or we got it. In our case, we needed a lot of work room, and you couldn't even stand in it. You sank down. So we got up on our landing crafts when they had wood on the craft. So, and we had a three-quarter ton pickup. So we loaded it up, and we'd come and lay a wooden floor on top of the sand so we could stand. And on top of on top of the wood. Then we had to build big workbenches. We had to dismantle all the guns on the planes, whether they fired or not, every day. They rusted up in one day, and that was constant all the way through the Hawaiian Islands too, in Midway. They could only be left alone one day and it'd be rusty the next day. So we laid the wooden floors and we had our operation going. And the planes came in the morning. It's memories. Planes would come in the morning, we're strafing in the afternoon. Same day. And the target was so close that the empty cartridges from the gun shooting, being shot in the plane, were landing on the airfield. In other words, the Japanese were just on the other side of the airfield. I think they were close to the second airfield, which intersected with the first airfield. So if I was to get, the guns are synchronized for 1,000 feet, so that's about 3 blocks. So the Japanese target was only about 3 blocks away from where we were. And in talking about the 45th, and 46th, and 47th, we were on airbase number 1, and they came on airbase number 2. And one morning, when we all got up in the dark. And started to work. One morning we got up and the guns were firing, rifles were firing, and the Japanese were attacking the pilots of the 45th, 46th, and 47th squadrons right next to us. They got in their tents and were bayoneting sabers and whatnot. That's how close they were.
Could you hear it? Were you able to engage them and push them back?
Well, the people in those 3 squadrons, plus all the flying, we knew them all. And that the officers were the target. So on we go.
What was the impact on your unit after that?
We never had a problem with what everybody worked, everybody did their job. So we would get a call on a mission to load napalm bombs, and we'd load the bombs, and they'd bomb and load the 500. See, normally a fighter plane wouldn't have, like we dropped 500-pound bombs, and napalm were probably 400 or 500 pounds too. And that was a constant flow of ammunition over the targets. Once the need for support for the Marines stopped, and our planes were escorting B-29s to Japan. So the B-29s that were damaged in Japan would fly over, and they couldn't make it back to Guam, and they'd bail out. And the plane would go out to sea. And that was every flight of 3 or 4 planes would come over. And one plane didn't go out to sea, it made a U-turn and landed on top of 9 of our airplane. It was a big hullabaloo, too.
How much greater was your resolve after you saw what the Japanese had done to your fellow airmen? Did it make you more determined? Did it make you?
We were always determined. We never backed down. I mean, it was a constant for a long, long time. Our squadron was selected after we left Midway to train the pilots that came out of flying school in the States. And we worked 12-hour day, 10 days, and had a day off.
Did you stay on Iwo Jima for the duration of the battle?
I stayed on Iwo Jima for 9 months. And I left Iwo Jima the day they were going to drop the atomic bomb. We were scheduled. I was scheduled to fly out of Iwo Jima to Guam, and then from Guam to Honolulu. And I flew from Iwo Jima to Guam, and that night the captain of the ship called us aboard and took off. The bomb was going to be dropped the next day. So instead of going from Guam, from Iwo Jima to Guam to Honolulu, we went by ship around Midway. And the day the war was over, we were the day the war was over, we were 1 day out of San Francisco. Now, being that we did go to Honolulu, they turned us around and said it. Back to Honolulu. So we went towards Honolulu for 1 day, and then they turned us around again and sent us to Seattle. We were the first ship to land in Seattle. And that night we had dinner served by the German prisoners of war. Next day we left.
After all that time, what was it like to hear the news that the Japanese had surrendered?
That when we were 1 day out of San Francisco.
But was there relief? Was there jubilation? What was the mood?
I would guess it was a known fact that they had to surrender, and they were defeated, and it was kind of it has to happen. I don't think we expected it to happen, so it didn't. All we wanted was shore.
Well, the military commanders, one of the main reasons they went to Iwo Jima is because they believed that airfield was critical to victory in the war. So what does it mean to you that you had a role in that airfield being a critical factor in winning the war?
I know it was critical. I knew it was critical when we were there and what we were doing. And we just did our job like we were supposed to do it. Nobody ever backed down, and it was all gung-ho, straight ahead.
But of course, securing the island and securing the airfield came at a great cost. And you saw that cost up close.
Yeah, I saw him buried to dead. Being not a very real large island, it wasn't not a place to have a cemetery, so the Marine cemetery was dug out in the sand and deep, so that they laid down one group of body bags, covered them with sand, lay down another group. He figured they buried maybe 5,000. There was a lot of tight body bags covered, 5 deep. It wasn't very good. And 20 wounded, 20,000. They didn't expect the normal division at 5,000, and normally they were figuring on using about 4,000. And there were 20,000 wounded and 5,000 dead. When I was talking about coming ashore, the bodies were still not identified yet. They were just piled up in piles and piles. They had a fingerprint them and identify the bodies and do all that stuff.
Do you still think about them often? Do you still think about them often?
For years I fought war. I would have to say I think about them all the time. All the time. It's hard to forget.
Indeed. Sir, do you remember seeing the flag atop Mount Suribachi?
Yeah. That was interesting. The Marines fought their way up Suribachi, and after they put up the flag and secured the island. The Seabees came and they put a road right up there. Put a road right up to the top. That's where we went up the road. Maine were unbelievable. The Seabees were unbelievable. Seabees, I should say.
And I understand you actually own a picture of the first flag that
Yeah.
was raised that was never made public. Is that right?
The first flag was taken down it was never made public. Something didn't work out right for the public.
And you had a friend that took a picture of that, right?
Right.
What does it mean to you to have that historic photo that virtually no one else has seen?
I have it on my dresser all the time.
What do you think about when you look at it?
I have to say, I am proud to be a veteran of the war. Took us a long time, but we got it done.
Just a couple of moments left, sir. What are you most proud of from your service?
I had a section. My section was, I had 60 armors working for me, and I'm proud to say that I had them working together. No matter where they came from, no matter what rank in life, I had them working together. After the war, I should say after the war, when we went to service, it was required that we have a high school education. And after the war started, they lowered the requirement and brought in less educated people to do the donkey work or whatever. And we could work on the line. So we got people illiterate, and we got older people, and some had a tough time in life, and I blended them in Kaneohe. I blended them in with us. In fact, one of them I had as my shop, kind of shop guy, keeping my shop working, equipment there for the other guys to use. And he was from Puerto Rico. And I promoted him all the way up to sergeant. It's a matter. It's a matter of understanding people's needs and working with them and make everybody welcome. I did that in the service, and I did that in my work.
Lastly, sir, what does it mean to you to have your story recorded and shared with future generations?
I have to say I will be very proud to have my future grandchildren, great-grandchildren, see what I did.